Hey everybody, how you doing? Fantastic. Welcome, Northstar. If you're online, thank you so much for joining. Okay, so if you've seen me, you know me. People are like, hey, Wendell, you got a lot of energy. And that is true. I got a lot of energy. I think part of that is personality. Yes, God gave me this. But sometimes that's not enough. If you have people in your life, you know that after a while, people can start to wear on you and just kind of wear. Like, some days I'll be out here before service and some people walk up to me, hey, man, you do the music. We love that. You're a lot shorter than we thought. And I'm like, then I got to come up here and behind the piano, and I'm like, oh, welcome. Yeah. So stuff like that. It's like, I'm doing good. Things are going great. But then you just like kind of down me. And that's a simple one. In those moments, I kind of want to respond, right? You want to kind of be like, well, you know, I'm not done growing yet, you know, mid-30s, it's, you know. But it's like sometimes God, I feel, sometimes will just kind of push in my heart, and it's almost like he holds me and doesn't let me say what I want to say. And I want to just respond, but he holds me back in ways that I don't even want to. Maybe you understand this. There are times where there's things you want to say to people. When they respond to you online, maybe you understand as well, where you want to, but it's like God has you on a leash, right? And he's just holding you back, and I want to go, you know. God's like, nope, we're not going to go that way today. Come back. Shh, quiet down. We're not going to say that. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, good. Okay, I have to say, though, through that time, this growing time that I've had, not height-wise, but just with this, we're going to get off that. As I've grown, I feel like there's three particular ways that I have grown spiritually. One is with joy. People are like, man, I got this joy, and I think it's because of things like this. Other is patience. And the third, Pastor Delbert talked about this when he did his sermon, but it's just not getting easily offended. Because it's so easy to get offended at all sorts of things. Pastor Marty opened up this message, this series, with the fact that God loves us. And that's the best place to start with anything. The fact that the only reason we are is because God first loved us. But after that message, it made me start to think. And I was like, okay, so if he loves us, how do I respond to that? Because y'all know, just because somebody has a crush on you, don't mean you crush them back. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not. And if God loves us, that's fantastic. But is there anything that we are supposed to do to respond back to that? Take a minute and just think. How do you respond back to God's love? If you can talk to me, so you can yell it out. But if you're online, maybe you can type in how you would respond to God. What are ways that you're like, when I do this, when I'm involved in this, I feel like this is what God made me for. I feel so good about it. This is awesome. Just take a second and think about that. Got something in your mind? Okay, everybody get something in your mind? I think that those things are kind of like staples that kind of help us ground our relationship with God, and they are very good. So obviously, playing piano, playing drums, that's something when I'm doing it, I'm like, man, God made me for this. I feel so good. You know, so I'm jumping and dancing. I feel so great. It's a staple. But sometimes that can be kind of stale, kind of like a Christian ID card that just kind of gives, you know, it just tells, this is who you are, this is what you do, okay? If anybody wants to guess about how old I was right there, if you win, we'll treat you to coffee. I'm not paying for it, but somebody will treat you to coffee. You know, I'm a certified Christian because I'm doing this thing, right? I feel good because, hey, this is why God made me. But playing piano or playing drums or, you know, singing or maybe your job, whatever that thing is, that's part of your relationship with God, but it's not the full thing. There's another very big aspect of growing with the Lord, and it involves people. The same people that will walk up to me and be like, hey, you're short. Those very people, for me to be all that God's called me to be, for you to be all that God's called you to be, it involves people in a certain way. And so I think when I read the Bible, I see the story, there's verses and stories that just yell this back out loud to me. I'm thinking about John 21, where Jesus is like, hey, Peter, do you love me? And he says, yeah, Jesus, you know I love you. Okay, then feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Yeah, I love you. Okay, feed my sheep. Okay, so I have like a kind of analogy. If you think of like a workout, you do push-ups, because like I can do push-ups, right? I got push-ups like this. This is good. All right. Got a few diamonds in here, you know what I'm saying? I got some diamonds, that's good. We can go up, I can get from the nose, and it's like, I got this workout, do some pull-ups, I'm good. I don't need to check out your workout. I got my workout. It works fine. There's no problems. There's no issues. We're good. Why would I want to change from that, right? And then there is something that just interrupts that. Same way like people just interrupt your life. Okay, so just for example, I'm playing piano, things are going great, and then all of a sudden someone says something very derogatory to me and just throws me off, right? Kind of like if you got your workout routine and then someone's like, hey, you need to be on the TyTax 2500. Y'all know what I'm talking about? TyTax 2500? Brad, was Brad here? Do you do TyTax? You don't know what that is? Do you even lift, bro? Anybody? Okay. Melissa, would you please show these kind people online and in the room the TyTax 2500? Yes. You have your workout routine and things are going fantastic, and then some person comes in your life. It's like they throw you off your routine into one of those, and everything just goes crazy, right? Like all of a sudden, I knew what I was doing. Everything felt nice and in rotation, and then you just came in and threw everything off, right? Okay. The only issue with this is people are not really machines, right? And so as much as they throw you off and make you feel crazy, those are the people that Jesus died for. And by those, I mean them, as in you, as in me, right? It's not just some awkward machine that we can just leave the gym on. And I don't care where you are, you're going to run into somebody who's going to say something to you that's going to really throw you off. So how do I balance both of these things? I have the things that I love, that I feel strong and secure in, because this is my Christian ID card. I'm like, when I do this, I feel good to go. And then there's these people. You know what I'm saying? And these people just, and I got to balance both of these too, because if I don't, we all know the picture of that guy in the gym. You know what I'm saying? All upper body. And it's like, right? So why do I need this? Why do I need to figure out how to work and live with people that are difficult? Because we're going to be imbalanced. If not, because people are the people that Jesus died for. You can't get away from us, right? We're everywhere. So I'm thinking about this situation and how to deal with this, and it gives me a thought, and there's a question that has helped me try to get through this. The question is, how do I draw you closer to God within the context of our relationship? Now, that's a lot. Let me explain what I'm saying. There's different relationships we have with different people. Some relationships are fantastic, and they're so great. When you get around those people, it's almost like they lift you up and just make you feel amazing. But there's other ones, like your boss. You know, that might not be the greatest relationship. You might be looking for another job right now. Or with your family, you might have a sibling or a parent or someone who just drives you. You got 20 minutes, and then it's like, I'm out. You know, there's all different sorts of things. Employees, maybe you're a business owner, and there's always that employee who's like, hey, I can't come in today. I'm sick. You haven't been in all week. I need to pay you, but you got to work, you know. All these different things. So with all these different types of relationships, how do I pull that together in a way that brings significance to me and to the other person? And why does it even matter? It matters because God is in the business of changing people's hearts, right? We look at the actions that people do, and that's how we kind of judge each other. But God is in the business of changing and working in a heart. And if he works on a heart, then they'll start to change. The actions will start to follow. Pastor Roy had that analogy a few weeks ago with the balloon. He was like, where your heart is. You know, you remember that maybe? Right? Okay, yeah. You can nod, you know what I'm saying? Like, amen, brother. Give me those. Okay. All right, there we go. So it'll follow that way. And that makes me realize and think about the one thing that if I could sit down with coffee and the conversations I feel like I have been having, if I had my one thing that I would share, it would definitely be that I need you. In ways that I don't think that I need you, I do need you. Just like I don't want to end up being imbalanced and have those, I have very strong legs, but if I don't want to have spiritually weak legs. I want to be strong, okay? So we're going to look through the Bible, and I'm going to give you an example of that so it's not just me talking. Sound good? Sound good? All right, we're going to talk a lot. Let's go. We're going to talk about the book of Philemon. Anybody know that book? You can raise your hand up online. If you know it, say, I know that book. Great. This is a great book. It's one chapter. It's like 26 verses. It's not talked about very often, but it is so powerful. So let me give you the background of what's going on. There's three main people, main characters. There's Paul the Apostle, who we all know. If you know Paul, he wrote 13 books in the New Testament. He's kind of a huge, big deal in Christianity. Then there's Philemon. Philemon is a Christian who Paul actually led to God, and he had him start a church in his home. Shout out Lee. And then there's Onesimus. Onesimus is a slave that Philemon had. Now, let's just talk about that word real quick, because when we say slave, everyone's like, oh, pause, right? This is different. If you understand the life back in biblical times, there's a range of ways that you could become someone's slave. The word that's usually used is indentured servitude, and basically what that means is, if you owe me a debt, you don't get to do nothing until you pay that off. So, obviously, when we think of slavery, there's the African-American slavery, which I think is pretty bad. That's funny. So, but back there, you could just owe somebody a debt. So if I owed you money, I can't work for anybody else. I can't take care of my family until that debt's paid off. Okay, so we're not sure exactly the exact nature of how he was a slave, but the point was Onesimus owed Philemon something, and he had to work for him to get it paid off. We're good? Okay, so he's having to pay this debt off, and instead of paying it off, he goes and does something to him. People believe that he stole from him or did something. We don't know. It's not super clear, but he wronged him in a very significant way. And then he ran away, right, which is understandable. Somehow when he ran away, he found Paul, which is super crazy because Paul is in jail at this time for preaching the gospel, right? So Paul meets him, starts discipling him up, totally changes his life, and he's like, okay, great. Now that you're a responsible, God-loving little disciple, I'm going to send you right back to Philemon to go make things right. Okay, y'all with me? Yes. Let's read it. We're talking about my first point here. Jesus' love should stir my love for others. And we're going to look at this through the perspective of Onesimus. So Onesimus, just make sure we're all on the same page. It's the slave who stole from his owner, and then he ran away. Cool? We're going to start in the only chapter. We're going to go at verse 8. This is why I am boldly asking a favor of you. This is Paul talking to Philemon. I could demand it in the name of Christ because it is the right thing for you to do. But because of our love, I prefer simply to ask you. Consider this a request from me, Paul, an old man and now a prisoner for the sake of Christ Jesus. I appeal to you to show kindness to my child, Onesimus. I became his father in the faith while here in prison. Onesimus hasn't been much use to you in the past, but now he is very useful to both of us. I am sending him back to you, and with him comes my very own heart. We're going to jump to verse 15. It says, it seems you lost Onesimus for a little while so that you could have him back forever. He is no longer like a slave to you. He is more than a slave, for he is a beloved brother, especially to me. Now he will mean much more to you, both as a man and as a brother in the Lord. Okay, that is a huge recommendation for Onesimus, because he's coming from being a slave, and now big old Paul, who was like creating the ministry of Christianity since Jesus, has given this letter to Philemon. So think about Onesimus. He's, has to travel back to where Philemon is, and he's going to have to confront him. Think of the different issues that he's going to have to go through before he can face him. One, there's a relational one. I think about this. Go with me for a second. You're sitting in traffic, and there's a car coming, and they're kind of coming kind of slow, and you're kind of a little bit of a hurry, but you're kind of also texting at the same time. And you kind of just pull out real quick, and you keep going, and then all of a sudden and you're like, uh-oh. And then you keep going, bam, you hit the red light, the car comes around. Y'all with me? Okay. Y'all know what it's like. And there's the awkward, like, I'm just going to turn right here. And see. All right. Think about having to face that person that you just wronged, right? How terrible that we don't do that. That doesn't happen. Paul wanted Onesimus to go right back up to Philemon and be like, hey, I didn't do everything wrong, but I did wrong you in this way. And I want you to know that, hey, I'm sorry, and I apologize. That's the relational one. Then there is the legal one, because he was legally his slave. He could have came back and been like, hey, I'm so sorry. I got this letter from Paul saying, please forgive me. And he's like, oh, great, fantastic. You're forgiven. Hey, I'm going to need you to serve this sentence in jail real quick. Appreciate it. This is great. This is fantastic. As soon as you get out of those 5 years, we'll be great, you know? Like, he had the power to do that. Then there's the social one. Because he's going out, he's known as Onesimus the slave to somebody other than Philemon, and he's supposed to be brought back as a brother. Imagine the other people talking to him, and they see him. Hey, Onesimus, how you doing, bro? Aren't you a snitch? Weren't you the guy who stole from so-and-so, and then you went to go talk to boss's boss, and now you get to... Look at how that works, that's so convenient. You can just go run off and all your problems go away. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure somebody had to say that to him once he got back. He had to deal with all of those thoughts, right? Unless he was thinking, you know what? Maybe I can draw Philemon closer to God by me coming to apologize. Right? That changes everything. And that has the power to give you the boldness to kind of go through and be like, it might be worth it. And I gotta rely on God to see me through it, right? Let's look at 2 Corinthians chapter 3. This is Paul speaking to the Corinthians. He says, are we beginning to praise ourselves again? Are we like others who need to bring you letters of recommendation, or who ask you to write such letters on their behalf? Surely not. The only letter of recommendation we need is you, yourselves. Your lives are the letter written in our hearts. Everyone can read it and recognize our good work among you. Clearly, you are a letter from Christ, showing the result of our ministry among you. This letter is not written with pen and ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. It is carved not on tablets of stone, but on human hearts. Okay, so Onesimus could show love to Philemon by asking for forgiveness. And Philemon could show love to Onesimus by going and forgiving him. And they both could look at that and be like, that's proof of God working. But after everything I did, Philemon, you're going to forgive me? He's like, hey, man, I want God to be made alive in me and shown in you. And then Philemon could be like, man, after everything that I did, you're going to forgive me as well? Or you're going to accept my forgiveness? I don't really want to, but because I want God to come through and I want to draw you closer to him, it's worth it. And I think that does something that is... you don't see that anywhere in this world. You just see, like, who's guilty? Let's make views about it on social media and laugh at them. Right? We want to exploit everybody who does. I mean, you could trip on stairs, and there's a video about that person. We want to exploit the person who's wrong. Right? Okay, so here's my personal situation. This is back in 2010, a little while ago. I was at UCF, and I was a drum major. Things are going good, playing drums. And one of my friend's fiancés was at UCF as well. And so we'd see each other every now and then. And we'd like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Hey, what's up? How you doing? We go to events together. We get lunch sometimes. It was pretty cool. So then we talk about things, talk about God, talk about all sorts of things. And then she started telling me about her relationship with her fiancé, who I knew very well, and I was like, well, what about this? What about this? Oh, that's a good thought. I should bring that to him. All that sorts of, we talk some more. Then we would text about it a little bit. Then we talk about it. Then we meet up at UCF and have lunch together. And then we would talk about it again. Then she'd call me, and then we would talk about it. Y'all see where this is going? And then we would talk a little more, and we would text a little more, and then we would meet up a little more. Right, this ain't good. Okay, so this went on for a few months, right? And so one night, it's probably over like 6 months. One night, I'm in the practice room and I'm playing, and my phone rings, and it's homeboy. And I hadn't talked to him in a long time, but I had talked to her probably like 15 minutes before. And my heart just was like, because all of a sudden I realized, boy, you better come with a story real quick. So I pick up the phone, hey, bro, how's it going? And he's like, hey, bro, I need to holler at you real quick. I got to ask you some questions. I need you to be real honest with me right now. And I was like, I was frozen. Because, listen, y'all don't know, I'm the Christian boy, okay? I grew up in church. I love God. I've never been that guy, right? They weren't married, so I wasn't a homewrecker, but, we're splitting hairs right now, okay? He's calling me trying to figure out, hey, are you really trying to get in a relationship with my fiance? Like, for real. What is going on? So he is quite perturbed. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what to say on the phone. I don't know what to say, and I'm making up, anything that I can. So he starts crying because they'd been through a bunch of stuff, and I think he realized this was kind of the last straw for the two of them. I messed up bad, right? I know God, and I know what I mean. In the beginning, I was like, yeah, Jesus. And I just let myself just slowly just get comfortable. So it ultimately led to them not getting married. And so we're on the phone, and, he's crying and crying and crying. He hasn't been a Christian as long as I had. Whew. So I'm expecting for him to be like, hey, bro, don't come on this side of town. If I see you, I promise you it's not going to be good, right? That's what I'm expecting. So he's crying, and he says, I'm not the man I used to be, I forgive you. I'm not the man I used to be, I forgive you. I didn't even know how to take that, especially that fast. This was probably over, the whole thing was a 30-minute conversation. And that fast, in tears, he's like, I'm not the man. So I don't know whatever man he was before, but that man right there probably tried to beat my behind. You know what I'm saying? But for whatever Jesus did in his life, allowed him to raise me up because I was guilty. I wasn't guilty of their problems, but I was guilty of what I did. And sometimes you got to face that thing, and when you do, you realize, I need Jesus. I think sometimes we think, oh, this bad thing made me realize that I need Jesus. But we need Jesus before you did those bad things. When we compare to his righteousness, we are so unworthy, and sometimes when we mess up, it lets us get a real picture of how far away we are from his holiness and righteousness. And so in that moment, I really saw, Wendell, you could be anybody. You're not special, right? You need God's grace and God's mercy right now, every single day. So what was my takeaway from that whole situation? God makes himself known by using people. Yes, I had the Bible, and yes, I knew God, but when I felt that guilt on me, and he said, I'm going to raise you up, I was like, I get it. God, I get it. I think I get it. Maybe I don't even get it as much as I need to, but in this moment, I feel how bad I need Jesus and how helpless I am to come up with anything in my mouth to say, hey, it's not my fault. I'm okay. I'm worthy. Think about that for yourself. If you have a moment in your life and you're like, man, I remember when I didn't do everything wrong, but this part right here, I pulled out in front of that person. And I was guilty. God's like, hey, I want to raise you up from that. And I want to use people to do it. Okay, so let's recap. The first point, God's love should stir our love for people the same way his love was stirred for me, even though he was very hot with me, right? Next point, God's love should stir my love for God. And we're going to look at this through the perspective of Philemon. And just to make sure we're on the same page, Philemon is a wealthy Christian convert and a partner of Paul who was holding a church at his home. And Paul's in a whole nother spot in jail. Okay, so we'll start at verse 1. Now this is the beginning of the book. This letter is from Paul, a prisoner for preaching the good news of Christ Jesus, and from our brother Timothy. I'm writing to Philemon, our beloved co-worker, to our sister Apphia, and to our fellow soldier Archippus, and to the church that meets in your home. May God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ give you grace and peace. Grace and peace. Okay. This is the deep one, guys. Did anybody catch that this letter was read in front of the whole church? This is for Apphia, Archippus, and for the people in your church. This wasn't like, hey, let's just figure this out. We're going to go in the back. This is how we deal with it today, with how we deal with stuff today. Let's go in the back. We'll figure it out. And we'll come back out. So there's a nice, big, pretty for Christians. Right? I want this read to the whole church. Because if this goes well, because I have faith that it will, everybody can benefit from it. This isn't just about you too. I know he's your slave. I know he wronged you. I know that you're a new convert. But it ain't just about you guys. It isn't just about you guys, right? Sorry. Now think about Philemon. His reputation's on the line. He's this wealthy guy. People are going to say, you just let this guy off a hook? All the things that he owes you, you're just going to let him go? Really? This is the sort of thing. I'm going to rob you too. Right? Is Onesimus even worth forgiving? Then I think about Velcro. All right, double-sided Velcro. We got two sides of Velcro. There is the hook and those are the technical terms, the hook and the loop, right? One piece, two sides, right? It's one piece. Okay, so in the kingdom of God, this is not the world, okay? In the kingdom of God, he doesn't just care about our actions, right? He cares about our hearts, right? Okay, so on one side of this two-piece of Velcro, we are concerned about justice. And we need to be concerned about justice. When somebody tries to cheat you out of a car, you need to make it right. Okay? There's justice there. But the other side of this Velcro is our heart before God. And he's looking at both of those equally. And sometimes I think when we are the person, like I was in 2010, the person who was wrong, it's easy to go, yeah, of course you're wrong. You did something you weren't supposed to do. But when we're on the other side, it's kind of easy to give ourselves a pass and be like, whoa, look what they did to me. Of course I deserve to curse them out, right? Or look what they did to me. Of course I deserve to be all, right? And the issue is when I continue to read the Bible and I see the stories of the things that God's called his people to be and the issues they had, man, he cares about both sides of this Velcro, right? I think about John chapter 21 again. When Jesus tells Peter, do you love me? He says, feed my sheep. We're going to look at that real quick. This is the third. He asked him 3 times. This is the third time. It says, a third time he asks him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, love everybody. Take everybody out to dinner and pay for their food. No, just feed my sheep. We stop there sometimes, but I kept reading, and so we're going to continue to read. Jesus said, I tell you the truth. When you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself, and you went wherever you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go. Jesus said this to let him know by what kind of death he would glorify God. Then Jesus told him, Peter, you follow me. Peter turned around and saw behind them the disciple Jesus loved, the one who had leaned over to Jesus during the supper and asked, Lord, who will betray you? Peter asked Jesus, what about him, Lord? Jesus replied, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? As for you, you follow me. Okay, let me tell you, Rand, that takes the wind out of me. I'm a church guy. I grew up in church. I mean, I was hanging out with everybody, but I'm a church guy, okay? And it is so hard to do the right thing all the time. Is anybody going to see what's going on over there and address that? Does anybody see this over here? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Am I alone in this? Right? Y'all like, I am doing everything that I think I can possibly do to do it the right way. I'm not cheating. I'm not going on, right? And then over here, it just is running wild. And nobody seems to talk about it. I think about right now, there's all these podcasts and docuseries and documentaries about churches and scandals and pastors going crazy. And yes, there's a justice side of that. That's horrible. And we obviously, thank God I'm at a church with an awesome pastor that we ain't got to worry about stuff like that. That's horrible. But then there's this other side of that as well. Because however long that church has been established, this verse was there before it. You know what I'm saying? And Jesus is like, no, Wendell, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to that pastor over in California. Are you going to follow me? Where's your heart? Right? I'll deal with them. But where's your heart? Are you committed? Are you devoted? And that's what I feel like, man, if you can get convicted in that, people can offend you. You know what I'm saying? And you will get patience with people because you're like, yo, you think you're my enemy. You think I am here to help draw you closer to God. I have a purpose in your life, and you have a purpose in my life. Right? Okay. There's a scripture, where it says when someone offends you, you go to them. Right? You don't just sit back and wait and be like, please bring me your sacrifice. We'll see if it's good. You know, we're supposed to run to that and be like, hey, you hurt my heart. I got to let you know that. I want to make it right. Okay? I'm going to let you know what you did. You broke my heart. Okay? We got to solve that. We don't just wait. Same thing with communion. That's why it's so important we take communion, because before we take communion, we're supposed to go back and get with the people that we have whatever issues we have and make it right. Like, the Bible is so serious about trying to make God seen through the people we're with. Right? Okay, here's another personal story. In 2012, I was wronged in such a horrible way that I actually don't even really talk about it. It was terrible. And so I just leave that where it is. But in that time, that's where I started looking at the book of Philemon. Okay, so for me, this has been a long journey, right? This is why when he asked me what one thing was, I was like, I already know what it's going to be, because this is what I've been living for the last 13 years. Okay, this thing wrecked my life, right? Fast forward to the present, where I feel like I've been growing, and myself, I've been maturing and growing in joy, patience. And some of you guys know, back in May, I was trying to sell my car, and this couple cheated me out of the deal, and I was like so angry and frustrated. If you were there that Sunday, I was speaking here about the Holy Spirit taking over, and like it was in my throat, and all of a sudden I just started crying because I was so angry over all of it. And what the bad part was, I didn't tell Laura yet, and my wife. And I was like, how am I going to tell her that all this happened? You know, I was so distraught. But my growth that I saw was, even through all that, I wanted them to come to God. Because I realized if they get closer to God, they won't do that anymore. And so what I ended up doing with the justice side, I made a Facebook video, and some of y'all saw that. And I was like, I got to do the right thing. I got to have the justice. But in this, I put in the video, I'm like, if they make things right, I will be the first one to make a video and say, hey, call it off. They made it right. Because before God, I want them to see me, even though they hurt me, and be like, man, I could get closer to God because of something that he did. Right? Okay, so my second takeaway, God acquires our obedience by appealing instead of love. He could have ordered Philemon to be like, hey, forgive Onesimus. I could have really blasted that couple that stole from me and just like keyed the car. I know where the car is. I could have found it. Could have called some guys and be like, hey, y'all go get him. Right? But God wants obedience through love. He appeals to us. I'm not going to force you, but I want your heart to bleed for what really is important and what really matters. All right. So let's recap. Love for God should stir our love for others, should stir our love for God. And third, God's love should stir my love to lead others to him. And we'll look at this through the the perspective of Paul. Paul, he was a golden child Pharisee who Jesus saved, called, and changed, and he later wrote 13 books in the New Testament. He was a very big deal. Let's read Philemon starting at verse 20. Yes, my brother, this is Paul speaking again, writing. Yes, my brother, please do me this favor for the Lord's sake. Give me this encouragement in Christ. I am confident as I write this letter that you will do what I ask and even more. Whew. Okay, now think about this. If y'all know the story of Paul, before he was Paul, he was Saul. That was his name. He changed his name. And he was this really big deal Pharisee, right? And the first martyr that's recorded in Christianity is Stephen the martyr. And Paul's one who ordered that. So he's got a body count on him. That means you order someone to get killed, right? And so imagine going from this pompous Pharisee who felt justified by ordering someone's death to now being someone who could appeal to two people to reconcile their differences when you are in jail. You're not even there to see it through. And then you're saying, I know you're going to do this, and you're going to do even more because of what I've invested and how I've been discipling you, right? How do you get from there to there? Let's look at Romans 9. Again, this is Paul. He says, with Christ as my witness, I speak with utter truthfulness. My conscience and the Holy Spirit confirm it. My heart is filled with bitter sorrow and unending grief for my people, my Jewish brothers and sisters. I would be willing to be forever cursed, cut off from Christ, if that would save them. Who is willing to go to hell so that someone who wants your demise can go to heaven? To take, like, basically you give them your seat. Thank you. Wow. Right? Like, I don't got to talk anymore. We can just end that. Think about that for a minute. I want my people saved so bad, I would give them my own seat to heaven. This is what I feel like I'm reading when I read the Bible. Not social media, let's exploit everybody. And I've been feeling this ever since 2010. And so I'm like, I feel like that leash that God has got me is like, you don't get to say what's just on the tip of your tongue. I have a plan that's way bigger than Wendell, you're so small in the way that you see this. You've got to look bigger. You got to trust me, and you got to be concerned with bringing people in any way possible. Figure out how you can be a part of bringing people closer to me. Because I got Paul over here, and he's ready to give his seat up. What did you do? You know what I'm saying? Okay, so my third takeaway. God desires for us to become more than we think. More than you imagine. You see yourself as some type of way, and I promise you, you're like down here from your imagination. God wants you to do so much more and become so much more by offering your heart to him. And my appeal to you online in this room is that you'd be like, you know what? Maybe I can try. I don't know. Maybe I can try. Okay. Some of y'all, you're like, Mr. Rollerson, I have some questions. That sounds very nice and good. But, so let me tell you what I'm not saying. Okay? Here's the first one. Every relationship can just magically be repaired. Oh, it's so magical. All I have to do is just pray, and then God's going to make everything right. That's not the way it works. Sometimes there's many people at play in situations, right? Sometimes you cut that person off, and they speed off, and you never see them again. You don't get to make it right. Not everything gets repaired. However, your heart is what you can control. So don't, at least for me, I'm not trying to see, like, how do I end this? What's the end of the story? I got one chapter, one day at a time. And if it's not repaired yet, I'm just trusting God. Right? Second, Christians should just take the L. And the L means loss for everybody who doesn't watch sports or something, There's this strange idea that being a peacemaker, which Jesus calls us to do, is being a doormat. And I'm not saying that at all. Paul asked Philemon not to just take the loss, but to let God use that loss to bring people close to him. It's like a whole different way of looking at the issue and a whole different goal than just getting back what was mine. Like I could have somehow got the money back from that car, from that guy, for sure. But God's like, I want more for you than that. Right? I don't just want karma. I don't want someone else to steal a car from him. What does that really solve if someone screws him later, right? That doesn't solve anything. God's like, I died for him, and I want you to be at peace in that. Okay? All right, third, there is a convenient timeline. Some stuff takes months, some stuff takes years. I'm going to tell you that situation I had in 2012, the first 7 years, I wasn't trying to hear nothing. I was not there. I'm like, nope. Took a long time. So don't rush. Don't go out today and just call somebody back and be like, hey, I know we have an abusive relationship for 1,000 years, but hey, it takes time. We got to grow ourselves up. We have to figure out where our heart is. And just like that Sunday that I was crying, you got to feel all those emotions. It's not like I'm just going to act like they're not there. But when I'm feeling all that, I'm offering it to God. And that takes time, okay? So let's be patient. The most important thing, I think, is that as we go and try to grow in the Lord and work with people who are crazy difficult, is that we do say, God, I'll try. I will try. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up on you. I'm not going to give up on your work for them. I want to help people, and I will try. Let me just pause for a second. I want you to think about a situation in your life, and if you've kind of cut it off, or if you're saying, Lord, if there's a way that you could do it. Think about the fishermen when they've been fishing all night long, and Jesus is trying to call them out. And they'd been fishing all night long, didn't catch anything. And Jesus, next morning, they're all coming in all super tired. And Jesus is like, hey, can we go out one more time? And they're like, oh, God. All right. And they go out. And Jesus says, why don't you try fishing from this side of the boat? Like, bro, I'm going to throw you out this boat. Don't try me. Like, are you kidding me? First of all, the boat's in the water, so it's moving like this. Right? It's not like it's just staying still and it's like north and east. You know what I'm saying? Like, what an insulting thing to tell a fisherman. Like, did you try this side? You know what I'm saying? But now think about that in your personal life. If Jesus is like, hey, I want you to try it again, you're like, no. But what happened when they did do it? Jesus worked in it. Before they were doing the work, this time Jesus is doing the work. Right? And that's the difference. We'll say, God, I'm not going to give up on you. I'm going to check my own heart. Because you might be doing something more than what I want. Okay, so I want to talk about 3 things that you can do today as we start 3 action steps that I've been living. Here's the first one, and I think about Onesimus in this. Invest the traits you expect from others. Okay, this is one that I have tried to live and I'm trying to live. Every time I go into a new sphere or a new job or a new school or whatever, it's like whatever I put in, then I can expect it out. But sometimes we just go in and expect things, like just to come out. If I don't invest the fruit of the Spirit, if I don't invest joy, if I don't invest peace, if I don't invest self-control, someone else might, you can just expect people to not do that, but they might act crazy, right? So I think the first thing, like Onesimus, when Onesimus, when he went back, he could have said, I'm different. Okay, sure. But until he literally changed who he was, which was slave Onesimus, to now brother Onesimus, he had to invest in Philemon. He had to invest in the people in the church. He had to become different. He had to act different. And I think that's something that I've tried to do. When I come, Pastor Marty said, hey, Wendell has this joy. I want to invest joy. That's intentional. I'm not just like, I just woke up this way. When I'm in the car, I'm like, I need to, I'm doing something so I can get pumped up. So when I go in, I'm lifting somebody up. Right? Invest that, and then you can say, hey, I need you to, come on, man. I need you to, come on, man. Right? Okay. Number 2, I think about Philemon. Meditate. By meditate, I mean pray and meditate on the future version of others. It's so easy to think about this past, whatever the worst part of a person is, and just sit and let that just marinate. Right? Philemon could have said, you're a slave, you'll always be a slave. I'm saved. I've got my act together. But you stole from me. Philemon had to make a decision to go, there's a future version of you that Paul recognized through the love of Jesus, and I'm going to believe that can be you. Right? And this is my own mental exercise. I'm telling y'all, leading worship and choosing songs and everything, sometimes people's opinions can, I love y'all, praise God, but sometimes I come on stage and people are like, this song, and I'm like, right? Oh, you hurt my heart, right? It's easy to get offended. It's so easy. But if I'm thinking, what if through this conversation, you could become somebody who's closer to God? Through my patience and not getting in my feels, you could become closer to God, right? It just changes everything. Okay, number 3. Like Paul, dream up a future version of yourself as spiritually mature as possible. This is something that I started doing it then, but before it never went in my mind. How old are you? However old you are, right? You know your age. What were you like 10 years ago? Very different, probably, right? How old are you spiritually? And what could you look like in 10 years? Sometimes I think if we imagine ourselves like, one day I could be like a Paul, where people are coming to me and saying, hey, what should I do? Now, we know last week Lee was like, in discipleship, a lot of times the answer is, read the Bible, figure it out, but having the wisdom to just be like, man, I've been through that. I know your issues. And in that moment, I had to call on God instead of just feeling all of the pain and just being like, I just gave up. I just went and got drunk and gave it all up, And so in those hard times, think, man, what can I add to my life so that in 10 years I'm gaining wisdom? And when I get gray hairs, I feel like I've really earned them. You know what I'm saying? And I got something I can share with you. Like, gray hair, like, to me, I'm looking forward today to being gray because I'm like, yo, this means I've been through some stuff that I can share. Not just like, oh, my back hurts, you know. Right? Because, yeah, everything hurts. Because the gray hairs are coming, but the wisdom doesn't come unless you intentionally take note of what you're going through. Right? Okay, cool. We want to be balanced in our relationship with God. Right? I don't want to be strong in one way. And people, I feel like I'm great. I can do 300 pull-ups. And everyone else is looking like, chicken legs. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so I need you in ways that I don't think that I need you because maybe we haven't started a relationship yet that's that deep. But I want you to know if there's one thing I can tell you, I do need you. I need you here. I need you online. If you're online, don't just tune in. Get involved. Talk to each other. You know what I'm saying? Love each other. Mess up together. You're going to have problems. Figure out how to make it work together so that we can bring people closer to God. Amen? All right. We're going to pray. I'm going to ask the prayer team to come up. And I want to pray for you. And then while I'm praying, I want you guys to pray for me as well. Because I need you. You need me. Let's pray. Father God, there's so many reasons, good reasons in this world to quit. There's so many reasons to strike out. There's so many reasons to look at our own life and just think that there's all there is. Good reasons, but you. You have a purpose that's greater. You have a plan that's greater. You have a love, as Pastor Marty said, that's so much greater. Help us to fall in line with your path. And God, I ask for anybody who has issues with people learning to love them after they've been hurt, after they've been forsaken. God, I pray that you would hold their heart through the pain, that you would help all of us as Christians to come alongside and not just, but you'll be okay, but to really live with each other. God, I thank you for this opportunity to look at the book of Philemon. And as we move on in your grace and in your mercy, help us see how we can draw closer to you and draw people closer to you. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, Amen. Thank you so much. God bless you guys. Awesome. If you want to pray, you can come down. They'll be down with you.